Welcome to the Meeple Syrup Show. We have another special interview for you guys. First of all, thank you very much for all the Kickstarter support that was given to Daryl and myself and the rest of the Meeple Syrup crew. Greatly appreciate it and loved every minute of the campaign, loved interacting with all the backers. And, you know, we're going to bring you a ton of good stuff this year. Because of it, we're going to Origins, we're going to Gen Con, we're going to the Gathering of Friends, and if everything pans out, we're going to get both of us, both Daryl and myself, to Essen. The partial funding will allow us to get at least Daryl there, so we will be there. Can't promise that we'll get everything done that we said we would for that level because we didn't reach it, so if only Daryl's there, we're only going to be able to bring you so much content from there. It's a lot of work for one guy to do. Anyway, we're here today with our very special guest, Noah from GameTrayz. He's actually wearing a shirt that has his logo on it. That's how pro he is. Welcome to the show.
Hey, how's it going?
Good, good, good. How are you today?
I'm great. Couldn't
So,
be better.
where are you located?
I'm in St. Louis, Missouri.
Oh, and hence the hat.
Hence the hat.
You're repping your team. Good, good. Okay, so tell me a little bit about yourself and a little bit about how you got into board gaming, and then we'll talk about the actual product because
Sure.
the product's pretty amazing.
I've got I want to say interesting history of how I became a gamer, but maybe not interesting for everybody. I have a degree in engineering and computer engineering, and I had a business. I opened a business right after college, doing website design and marketing. So I did that for almost 10 years, doing hundreds of websites for people and businesses. And I got into gaming by a friend of mine. So after that, I decided to do something in gaming, and I went to work for a retail company doing board games, a company called Miniature Market, which you may have known about. So I did a lot of games-related stuff there, got into met a lot of people, got into the industry, you could say, and once I was done there, I always wanted to do some sort of tray design or some sort of customized version of like a customized Plano box kind of thing, because everyone buys these for board games. I was buying one for every board game I had. I have hundreds of games. So if I'm going to spend $8, $9, $10 for this, I might as well get something that actually works for this specific game. So that was always my dream. And then I got another job at a thermoforming company, and that's where all of my past work experience came together with the actual process that I used to make the GameTrayz. So I worked for a year at a thermoforming company and learned 3D modeling. I basically did the whole gamut of the whole process of making trays myself there, making the molds, designing the molds, making the trays, running the machines. So that experience got me to where I am now. All three of those combined started GameTrayz, I guess.
Wow, so it's really been a convergence around in engineering,
Mm-hmm.
your love of games, coming together into one kind of, meeting of the minds and just kind of this cosmic explosion of karma where you come up with this thing that actually adds value
Right.
and is really an interesting product. So tell me first, what does thermoforming mean for the people who might not understand that?
Thermoforming, also maybe most people know, is vacuum forming. You basically have a mold. I should bring some molds to show you guys in a little bit. But it's a hard mold. It can be made out of hard plastic or aluminum, and you put it in the machine, and then you have a sheet of plastic, thin plastic, anywhere from 10 to 30 gauge, 40 gauge plastic. You heat it up to its not melted state, which is what you would do for like injection molding, like which miniatures are made out of, but it's a more flexible state where it's still together, and it becomes soft. After that, the mold comes up into the plastic, and then a vacuum turns on and sucks it down over the mold. And then the mold is cold, so it instantly hardens and keeps the shape of the mold.
Excellent. So what you're able to do then is come up with a thin product that is lightweight, low shipping cost, that can actually stack inside each other.
Right.
And that is actually going to custom fit everything to specifications and be the same every time off the mold, pretty much.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
The things that can change that is the thickness of the plastic, um, depending on how the mold is designed. But in most cases, if you alter it a little bit, everything still fits, depending on how it's designed.
Okay, and why I actually got interested in this was because of a specific Kickstarter, Island Dice.
Yeah.
And that was the first time, um, and maybe I didn't pay enough attention to the Euphoria aftermarket stuff, but
Right.
that was the first time I'd actually seen your product um, linked specifically to a Kickstarter campaign. And this is actually why I brought you on this show,
Hmm.
because, I mean, Thermoforming is awesome.
Yeah.
I like it. I don't know how much all the other game designers are going to think about this, but you
Sure.
and I have a lot. We had a little talk about what the show was going to be about before,
Yeah.
and one of the things that I thought was really interesting was how your product added value to another product,
Right.
and what new designers and people who are going to kickstart and publish their own games can gain from that. So can you walk us through the process that you and the people who put out Island Dice went through in order to A, come to an agreement,
Hmm.
B, design the tray, and as you told me before, this is the first tray that you've designed that actually has an in-game function,
Hmm.
and all that kind of stuff. Just tell us all
All of
about it
it.
because it's
All of
fascinating.
it. Yeah. Well, let me start with. I guess the first two trays I designed. The first tray I designed was for Terra Mystica, the one that you have, one of the ones you have there. That was kind of the proof of concept, and I did that while I was working at the thermoforming company. Yep. So that was the first test of like, can we do this? Will it work? Will it add functionality and quick setup time, or aid in setup time and teardown time, but also be useful in the game? So we did Terra Mystica. Then I worked with Jamie Stegmeyer on Euphoria because he's a friend of mine, and I'm like, hey, let me design a tray for it. And he's like, sure, whatever. And then I made it, and he helped me kind of get the word out about it because he has a nice, large following, and people responded well to it. And after Euphoria, then I decided to do this full time. After Euphoria is when I started getting interest from people doing Kickstarters. Basically, Brian from uh, he did Good Cop and Bad Cop, Good Cop Bad Cop card game.
Right, right, right. Yeah.
He approached me at Gen Con last year for his new game, New Salem, which was on Kickstarter last year. Um, and he wanted a tray for it. He saw my other trays and wanted a little tray for his pieces and the cards.
Well, they are pretty damn sexy. I mean,
Yes, yes. He's like, I need a tray for my game. So we kind of did a really quick agreement, and it was my first time doing it, so I didn't really know how it was going to work, but I'm like, let's just try it. And basically, what we did was he had already had his Kickstarter running. I came in kind of midway, so I designed it. I made the design and 3D rendered it, which is how I do most of the pictures on the website for trays I don't have produced yet, but the software I used makes pretty nice renderings, and we got that on the Kickstarter and added it as an add-on. So people could add an additional $10 for the tray, which would help him reach his goal quicker and also add a value to the gamer because it's not just for storage like most of the trays that come in board games, from China have in them. This one's actually going to be taken out like Euphoria, like Terra Mystica, and put on the table during the game and used to organize the gameplay. So that was the first go at it, and it went pretty well. I mean, I think we sold like 250 trays during the Kickstarter of 600 or 700 backers, so almost half. And then
that's a really good ratio.
yeah, and that was starting halfway through the Kickstarter or through the campaign, and we sold another 100 or so after during the survey people added it on. So it went well, and since then I've started reaching out to other uh, people doing Kickstarters for games and seeing if they're interested and talking to a lot of different people. Word gets around and people are contacting me about making trayz for their Kickstarter. So right now I'm still kind of refining how I'm doing it, depending on Brew Crafters is another one that I did, but that was after it was even, that was not even during the campaign, that was after it was produced and almost ready to ship. For that one, they were like, they got the game and the prototype, and like, this game needs a tray, like no game I've ever seen before. So like, please make a tray for us. So that was like maybe a month before it shipped. I think the Brew Crafters just shipped officially last month or beginning of
Yeah,
this month.
it's been a lately thing, so.
Right. So that was just advertised, way after the fact. So they were all pre-ordered on my website, all the
Oh,
GameTrayz.
okay. So backers had already backed it or bought
Yep.
it,
Yep.
and they were awaiting shipment, and
Mhm.
then Dice Hate Me would put out a letter, or you would put out a letter saying, "Hey, if you want to add this, just here's where you do it, and here's how you do it."
Right. Exactly.
Okay. And so you have a point of sales through your own website.
Right.
Excellent.
And then I'm also starting, since I've been working with these designers, it's a way for them to also sell their game on my website because it's a pretty easy, you know, to order the tray and then add a copy of the game right at the same time and ship it all at the same time for people who don't have the game or didn't back the game.
Right. So how does that work out for you? Do you get commission, or is it just kind of mutual? One way works, the other way works as well. So they'll sell
Uh,
your trays on their site, and you sell their games on your site.
it seems right now it's different for a lot of the different guys, so it just depends on what we come to an agreement on.
Okay.
But for the most part is, if they want to, they can sell trays on their site, but not everyone has a way to sell on their site, so they don't.
True.
And then, so if they do, they can buy trays at wholesale and sell them on theirs, and I buy games from them wholesale, and we just kind of do it
Oh,
like that.
okay. So when you ship out a tray from a game that was purchased from your site, you're actually also shipping out the game.
If they order it from me,
Right.
right? Not
Okay.
not the Kickstarters. The
Now,
ones that are kickstarted are still all shipped together from the designer, or
okay,
however they ship it.
or the publisher, right? So
Right.
when that happens, do you actually put everything in your tray inside the box?
Right now, no. I mean, of the ones we've done, no. Euphoria just had a reprint, not too recently,
Hmm.
or pretty recently, and uh, Jamie offered pre-orders on Euphoria tray on his website, and when he shipped them out, I just sent him X amount of trays, and he boxed them with the game and sent them off in a separate box, so that the user still has to punch out and then insert into the box.
Right. Okay. That'd be an interesting add-on service in a way, right? I mean, it'd be a
Yeah,
lot of man hours, but
right,
it'd be pretty cool to get the game pre-punched, everything put into a GameTrayz tray
right.
inside the box,
Yep,
and then you reseal the box, or you
yep,
might not even have to, depending on what the
sure.
client wants, and then
Hmm.
ship that smaller thing. I mean, obviously shipping your trays is very light, but
Right.
then they'd still go by volume for the shipping cost. But that's an interesting way to do things. That might be the wave of the future. Who knows?
Yeah, I thought about that, but then I also thought, a lot of gamers like to punch things out, and maybe they wouldn't want me to do it, kind of thing. But it would be an interesting thing to offer to see if anyone goes for it.
Yeah, just another thing, right? It's
Yeah,
another service. If if somebody pays for it, great. It didn't make that you made a new mold or anything like that.
right,
It's just a
right,
service. So just
exactly,
time.
exactly.
Cool. So tell us about the tray that's actually inside Island Dice and how it works for the game itself.
Right. Okay. So my general, I guess, mission statement, you would say, for the company is to pick games and design trays that'll do three things. We'll store the game,
Hmm.
which most trays out there do well or do okay. At least some of them do. Most of the trays that come in games don't even do that well. But store the game is the first thing. If it has to store the game and protect it. Set up and tear down. If it has to speed up the game by minutes of how you get the game to the table and start playing, and possibly also when you pack the game back up. And then the third thing is usefulness in the game. So if it can do all three of those, then I'm going to design that tray. If the game doesn't need a tray for all those things, then I normally try to find a game that does. So usefulness in game, storage, and setup time. Those are the three things. So that being said, that's when Island Dice came around, and he contacted me about his game. I looked at the gameplay videos and how it's used, and then it came to me that it's a similar thing to the Euphoria, or I'm sorry, the Terra Mystica tray that you have, the favor tray. Are you familiar with Terra Mystica?
Oh yeah.
So the favor tray is designed so you can pass it to the guy who wants to pick a favor, and he can pick it, look at it, and pick it himself right at his seat, so he doesn't have to get up and go to the end of the table where all the favors were laid out at the beginning of the game. So that kind of concept came to me with the Island Dice, because in that game, when it's your turn, there's maybe a dozen or so dice that you get to choose from that you want to roll, and they're in the tray, kind of like Terra Mystica. Favors are all laid out so you can pick them, and then you roll them. So you might pick 4 or 5 of those 12 dice when it's your turn to roll. So then, like, why not have the tray that holds the dice also be the spot where you can roll it? So that adds a fourth thing, I guess, to the tray design mantra that I have. That now you can use it not only for organize your play, but also use it for actual game play. So in the tray design has the dice on the outside. You pick your dice and roll it right in the middle, where there's a little area for dice rolling, like a dice box, basically. Built in.
Very cool. And I think you had said that one of the things you're looking into is doing whole boards, like vacuum forming, thermoforming a whole board. So for people who haven't seen games like Fireball Island, games like even Life. So Life has all those kind of mountain ridges and things like that. That would be the kind of topographical impression that you can get from thermoforming, and it'd be light.
Exactly. I can show you something here. I got. This is a piece of terrain, like from GW, from Games Workshop, right? It's like a crater. So this is cast resin, really heavy. I took that and I put it on the thermoforming machine, and I made this. So
nice, yeah.
This is basically the thermoformed version of that crater. So you can see how this could be translated to a board game. If the board itself had something like this in it, it could even impress other spots or places to put workers for worker placement type games, or in Fireball Island, if you guys know that game where the ball rolls around down the chutes. That kind of stuff can be made too. But the detail you can see, you can get pretty good detail with the thermoforming process. All of the nooks and crannies of the original, where the vacuum sucks it into all the cracks pretty well.
Now, depending on the thickness of plastic, you're going to get different levels of detail, probably, right?
Yes and no. The side that's against the mold, which is this side on this particular piece, should always look the same, because this is the actual mold. So it's sucking down to this piece. That should always look the same no matter the thickness of the plastic. Now this side, you can see it looks a little bit more rounded and kind of bulbous compared to the original. And that's the side that will change with thickness. So the thicker it is, the more rounded it will look. So that the only thing with that is that you can design the mold where the part touching the mold is the top, instead of this way where it's the other way. Negative.
Right, yeah, you can get the negative image. And then with the thickness, we're also going to talk about durability then. So something like what you just showed, the plastic you just showed, what gauge, I think
this is... Yeah, it's a 30 mil, and mil is actually thousandths of an inch. So 30 mil is 30 thousandths of an inch thickness, and that's what this is, which is, I guess the best way to describe it is, if you have any tray from a board game in any of your games on your shelf from China. The majority of those are 20 mil or less,
Right.
20 to 15. So you can feel those and kind of get a difference of how thick this is. Also, you have to take into consideration that when you look at the thickness, it will be the thickest at the flat part here.
Right.
As the plastic gets sucked down into the mold, the deeper it is, the thinner it will get.
Oh, yes, true,
the
true,
deeper
true.
it is. And you can see this happen on your trays too in your games. If you pull out the insert and you feel the corners on the bottom
Mm-hmm.
of the cavities, you'll see that it's thin, really thin in the corners because that's where the deepest part of the tray is.
Right.
So that's one thing to look at when you're thinking about thickness of trays, and is how deep it goes compared to the thickness of plastic.
So you would probably, and so the thing that you designed or suctioned onto the GW mold
Yeah,
obviously isn't optimized for the process of vacuum
right,
forming. And
exactly.
so you see like the line break on the side and whatnot, where it's like if you shake it enough, it's going to crack there because the angles are wrong.
Mm-hmm.
But you would know how to do that because that's what you do in
Exactly.
order to get a mold that wouldn't do that. Correct?
Exactly.
Right.
Right.
Okay.
And another thing is you have to think about is getting the vacuum to the mold. So if it's rough like this, where it's a lot of cracks and crevices in the mold, it's okay. But when you have smooth surfaces, you have to actually allow the vacuum to get to those areas, otherwise it won't actually
Right.
pull down. So the mold, I'll show you a mold, and I'll go grab the mold in a second. But
Mm-hmm.
some of the molds I have 1,000 holes drilled in it to allow
Oh,
the vacuum.
yes.
So a lot of the times when I'm doing a design, the final molds are done on a CNC mill,
Mm-hmm.
which basically takes a block of plastic or aluminum and cuts out all the spots that I need to make the mold. But when I'm doing new designs and prototyping and I need to do really quick stuff, I use 3D printer. And something like this, where I can 3D print a mold of this is just like a single cavity tray design, and then I put that on the thermoformer, suck it around, and now I have a piece that I can test.
Right.
So it goes right on, something like that.
Right. So you're also doing like rapid prototyping of your final product using, cutting edge technology in 3D printing,
Mm-hmm.
and then going back to the vacuum forming, thermoforming stuff.
So yeah, the brew crafters tray,
Mm-hmm.
especially with that one and Euphoria and trays where the design has things fitting pretty tightly and perfectly. I got to make sure that the mold or the pieces will fit in, the actual pieces will fit in there. So it helps with 3D printing because I can test, like, this is for brew crafters.
Right.
This is just like a 3-up version of brew crafters where the beer tokens will sit and the gold medallion token sits.
Right.
In the final version, there's 21 of these.
Mm-hmm.
So I can do just a few to see how things will fit in there on the 3D printer, and then go into and do a test mold on the 3D printer. Then go to the CNC mill, which takes a little longer and a little bit more prep time.
Right.
Because I might tweak this 3 or 4 times before it actually gets to that stage to make sure it fits exactly right in there. And,
Right.
you can pull it out nicely, and it angles nicely, and you can see all the things in it. Kind of thing.
What kind of 3D printer are you using?
I've got a few 3D printers. I've got I have a small, simple printer bot,
Mm-hmm.
and I just got an Ultimaker printer, and I'm looking at another one to add to my collection.
So if you were to recommend one to, say, somebody who is just getting into 3D printing, like say, myself or somebody
Yeah.
else, which one would you recommend right now? Just bang for buck kind of.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty easy question, bang for buck. The printer bot, that's PRINTRBOT, no E, printer bot, it just has the really, really good entry-level priced printer that got like top of the charts reviews for print quality, like, up against the $2,000 machines basically. So
Right.
it's a printer bot simple, They've got two versions. One is metal, full metal design that comes pre-assembled, and I think it's like $800. And then they have a wooden version, which is a kit that you can put together yourself if you're technical at all, or want to do it yourself. And those are like 400, I want to
Wow.
say. So it's like really affordable, and they make really nice prints and everyone likes them.
Well, that's what I was looking at your prints and thinking, wow, that's pretty good. I mean, obviously I can't see them very closely, but I don't see any of the, the ridgy kind of granularity that you might see in some of the other
Well,
things.
there is ridginess, and it's all a matter of time. So this is a little prototype that I did for the Eclipse tray.
Oh yeah.
So this is for the technology tiles.
Right. Yes.
So they go in there, right? So
Mm-hmm.
like that. So that my design where you push down and they lift out, the part in the middle is raised, just like
Right.
in the trays you have there.
Which I think is brilliant, by the way.
Thanks. The thing I did get the tilt idea of the back and forth from the tray in the it's a worker placement game. It has a nice tray in it. What game is it? Lords of Waterdeep.
Oh, right. It has a nice tray that doesn't actually hold everything in it.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
even that kind of proves my case of why my company needs to exist, because even the people say is the best tray in a game, or one of the best trays, still doesn't work very well, because
Yeah.
you have to think about the entire system of the tray design for it to actually work. You could put all the time and effort into making it cool, like they did, but then pieces fall out because
Yeah.
they didn't put a lid on it, or they didn't make it deep enough, or they didn't do things like that.
Yeah, and the neat thing about it is, or not the neat thing about it, but the thing about that particular tray is it depends on how you store it as well, right? If
Exactly.
you store it flat, works pretty okay. If you store it vertically, does not work at all.
Mhm.
And another thing that I wanted to talk to you about specifically is because it's all aftermarket stuff, or particularly a lot of it is aftermarket stuff, is this rising thing in Canada anyway, and I know there's some in the States, of board game cafes,
Yeah.
where we have, there could be 30 plays of a single game in a day,
Right.
and that teardown, that setup, the rigidity that it adds to the box, that
Hmm.
value add, the storage, all that stuff is a huge concern for us at the cafe because things get lost,
Yep.
things get used by many people many times. So anything that adds to the value in terms of teardown and setup, all the three things or four things actually now
Yeah.
that you've listed,
Hmm.
it's a type of thing that I really do consider when we're thinking about, is it worth it? Because, and that's another thing I wanted to talk to you about is it worth it?
Yeah.
Um, you see some of the aftermarket products for games costing almost as much as the actual game itself, um,
Yes.
and that's tough. That's a tough
Hmm.
sell.
It's tough
I
stuff.
mean, games are already a luxury item, and if I can get another game for the same price that I might pay for a tray or an insert or something,
Hmm.
where's the value? And I mean, as at the cafe, I see the value, but as an
Sure.
individual gamer, I'm not sure. So you're gonna have to be the spokesperson for that
Yeah.
whole area. So give me your spiel. What do you think?
Well, we just brought up like 17 different topics right
I
there.
know, I know. I'm sorry.
No, it's all right. I mean, let's which one do we want to talk about first? So the cafe thing.
Yeah, go ahead.
So do you own a cafe or work with at a
I
cafe?
work with a cafe. I don't actually get paid by them. I'm more of a
Right.
consultant. But yeah.
You can choose that. Yeah, that's definitely a cool thing. At Gen Con last year, a few people who said they have game cafes bought 2 or 3 or 4 trays from me there just for that purpose, because I don't know if you watched the video at Gen Con last year of shaking the box of
Yes,
yeah.
I do remember that. Yeah, yeah,
So that so they can store it any way you want. Especially with Euphoria, it works really well because of the sleeve on that game.
Yes.
With the sleeve on and the GameTrayz in, there's nothing moving around in there.
It was funny. Well, before the show, you saw me taking the sleeve off so that I can show it quicker, and it actually took me like seconds to take it off. This is what we're talking about here, that there underneath the rules and underneath the board is the lovely, lovely tray. And the tray, and I can do this because of this. I can do this.
Hey, it worked.
Right, and it works. If I let go of it, things are going to fall. But it has this clear plastic cover right here. It's thin, clear plastic cover that's, very actually strong in the end of things. But that just kind of seals everything in. And then once you put the board and rules on top and the lid on top, it ain't going nowhere. And if you put the slip cover, that's like solid. And the only thing you're hearing is like little bits of rattle. So everything's in there snug as a bug in a rug, and it's really quite wonderful. And there's also I'll show you when I go do a Passover video, but there's actually room for cards sleeved or unsleeved.
Yes.
I know, right? I mean, it makes sense.
That's the number one question I get about.
Oh, really?
Yes. Prospective clients or buyers of the trayz. The number one question is, does it fit sleeve cards? And I'm not a sleever.
Yeah, me either.
But apparently a lot of people are. And I did a survey on my Facebook page last year for Euphoria owners, if they sleeve, and I think 60% said they would sleeve, and like another 20% said they planned on sleeving at one point.
Yeah.
So
it's an investment, right? Especially some of the boutique games that you never know if they're going to get reprinted again.
Right, and it seems I haven't taken this survey, but I would venture to say that the people who buy in GameTrayz also are sleevers. So I definitely take that into account for all the games that I've designed, and I have to approach it differently depending on what the game is and how big the box is, really. Because Euphoria, for instance, it has a lot of extra space in the box.
Yes.
So I had the luxury of having two separate spots that fit each perfect. So there's a spot for sleeve version and a unsleeve version, and both of them fit those respective cards.
Did you play with a lot of Lego when you were a kid?
Constructs was my thing.
Constructs. Because I noticed that the little trays, the little movable resource trays, like they actually kind of lock onto the bottom clear part. So I thought, that's like a Lego guy.
Yep. So that will slide around.
Yeah. Okay. So the other question I asked you, and this goes to your customers, is there a limit to the cost that people will pay for these things, you think? And what is it?
My price model, I would say, my goal is to make a tray that everyone likes, that works great, that adds value, and keep it to at most 50% of the game cost. Starting. If you notice on my website, I have a lot of different color options and finishes.
We can talk about that too.
Yeah, so what I normally we always offer clear, which is the easiest plastic for me to source, and normally I can get the best rates for.
Right.
Those I keep clear as low as possible. So if you want a clear tray, you get all the functionality of the tray at the lowest price I can offer, and I normally keep that at or below half of the price of the game. If you want, you can upgrade your plastic, color, finishes, all sorts of thicknesses, and then you can upgrade from that clear price.
When you upgrade the thickness, does your mold change?
It can, yes.
Right. Oh, that's interesting.
Right now, I don't specifically offer thickness upgrades. It just so happens that some of the other plastics that I use in the different colors are thicker.
Right. Yeah.
But as a baseline, I use 30 mil at the 30 mil plastic. It was normally the thinnest I use. Sometimes on the lids, like the Euphoria lid, which doesn't have very much depth at all, I can do 20 and it would still feel pretty thick, 25. But even then, I still use 30 most of the time. And then I go up from there. So some of the deeper parts, like the Euphoria, the base part of the Euphoria tray,
Right.
that's 40 mil, I think.
So the base clear part?
I forgot what I sent you, but I sent you a Frankenstein version, I think. So
Yeah, that's fine.
I wanted to show you all the different plastics.
Yeah, I have like 4 different finishes within one box, right? So
Yeah.
that's cool.
So if you order from the site, for the most part, you get all the same color, except there's a black and white version of the Euphoria tray, which is basically just half black, half white. But you can order all white, all black, and then there's the flocked, which is you have the red flocked, I think.
Yes, I do.
Which is that felty finish that you see sometimes in trays.
Yeah, so why did you start offering that one? I'm just curious because I remember it as a child when you got really expensive board games, that's what it came with.
Yes, yes. It does make it feel luxurious.
Oh yeah, it feels like a poker table. It feels like you're gambling or something.
Yeah, or it's like you got jewelry or something in there, you know? Yeah, it's just because it's cool. That's why I started. I don't know. The plastic comes flocked. So this is the plastic.
Oh, okay.
So I can order it it comes with the flocking on it flat. So this is just like all the plastic that I use. And it already has the fuzzy side on it. So it forms with the fuzz. But it's more expensive by a long shot.
Right, yeah.
To order. So that's why it's more expensive. So if you want the luxury, then you pay a little bit more for the tray.
Luxury.
If you want the functionality and the bottom price, then you can get the clear tray, which is pretty cool too. I mean, it's not.
The clear stuff actually? Is any of it actually stronger? I just remember something about plastics when I was dealing with plastics that the less color you have in it, the stronger it is. Is that true of this plastic as well?
I don't know specifically about the color being an issue, but there are definitely different kinds of plastic, and you have several different types of plastic there that I sent you. For instance, the red flocked, and actually most of the flocked is a plastic called high impact polystyrene,
right?
Which is basically styrofoam. The same,
neat.
The same stuff
yeah, of course.
Packing peanuts are made of, except it's much denser.
Okay.
So it's thicker and stronger. It's not as fluffy, but it's the same plastic type. And it's light. It still is light though compared to like the clear part, the clear one you have.
Right.
The clear tray you have, I think, is PET.
Yes, that would be probably the PET plastic. The same thing we make bottles out of, right?
Yes, and that's actually a plant-based plastic. It's not oil-based or petroleum-based plastic.
Right, and that probably makes the cost go down as well because it's made from a renewable resource and can be renewed and all that stuff. So.
Yes and no. I mean, it's still pretty much the same as other clear plastics.
Oh, okay.
Depending on, I mean, at the levels I'm buying at, or the quantities I'm buying at. The other clear plastic that I use sometimes is PVC, which is just like the white stuff that you see drain pipes made out of at your house, but it's clear. And then there's other plastics from there that I use not as often, but each of them have their own properties. The polystyrene, the red, the flock stuff is light. It does have a possibility of cracking sometimes on seams on the thinner stuff, and if you overheat it. The PET can crack pretty easier than some other things, and the PVC is a little better on that. It actually bends easier, but it also takes a lot longer to heat up in the forming process. So every plastic has different ups and downs to it.
That's super interesting. It actually, I'm actually interested in that. I
don't know.
I'm just a bit of a geek about things like that.
There is. I could probably talk for another half hour on plastic types.
Let's talk about molds. Because that's really interesting to me. Back when I first got into the business, about 10, 11 years ago when I started all this stuff, we had been talking about molding figures and figurines and dice and parts and things like that. And so at the time, the average mold cost for just a single mold, and it could hold, maybe I think it was like 4 figures or 8 dice or something like that, was in the realm of $3,000 to $5,000. It was really expensive, and that was actually the biggest cost because injection plastic stuff is the plastics dirt cheap, relatively speaking, compared to the mold.
Right.
Has molding gone down in price with the introduction of new technology, or is it still pretty much the big cost involved in what you're doing?
Yeah, it's definitely the big cost. The 3 to 5,000 is a legitimate number for a mold. I brought a mold in here. Just like anything, it depends on the size and the complexity.
Right, and yours are game box sized. Some of them.
Yeah, some of them, yeah. And sometimes I do multiple on the same mold. So, like the Terra Mystica one, I've got a mold that does 2 at a time.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So it's less forming time. So this is the Euphoria top mold.
Yes, it is. That looks exactly like it.
I don't know, is it focusing on it all right?
Yeah, no, that's fine. Yeah. And so you can see each area where you put the dice. You see where all of the player parts go. Oh, this is another cool thing about these trays is for people who don't know how to put stuff back in a box. All the buckets, all the little containers are labeled with an icon on the bottom saying this is where dice go. This is where player pieces go. This is where everything goes, and it's a really nice way of doing stuff for people who are like at a cafe who may have only just played the game once and don't know where everything goes back. It's easy for it to go back in at least somewhat the right place, which is great.
Yeah, that's I didn't think about that when the cafe thing when I wanted to put in there. I just thought, well, I can do it. Why not put in?
Why not make it even cooler?
Yeah, make it even cooler. So yeah, this is made out of plastic. This is a plastic mold, but it's super heavy and durable. And this was made on a CNC mill. So it has the smoothness to it that the 3D printing doesn't have.
Right.
And this can also be polished, and I can also make this out of aluminum eventually, which will last forever, basically.
Right.
Unless you drop it and ding it. But
just don't drop it.
Exactly. That's easy. But yeah, this also has all these holes drilled.
Oh, right. Yeah, there you go. So all those holes are for the air to get sucked out and pull the plastic down into the mold.
So these are big holes on the back, but that just gets me close to the surface.
Right.
When actually I go through the surface, I use a super, super tiny drill bit to make minuscule holes that won't show up, although they do show up. If you look closely at your trays, in the corners you'll see small little holes where the vacuum holes are.
Oh, yeah. Like little dimples.
Little dimples, yep. Those are the vacuum holes, and there's at least 4 or 5 in each one of these cavities.
Right, and they don't show up as much in the flocked ones. The flock kind of covers it up a bit.
The flock does cover up, but it does cover up some of the detail too.
Yeah.
But if you turn that tray over and look at the back, you'll see the dimples.
It'll look the same as the other ones, right?
The back will show the dimples because it's sucking in on that side. But yeah, and then the engraving, for instance, the Euphoria in the top there.
Oh yeah.
Each letter has 3 or 4 holes in it.
That's crazy.
Because you have to do it, otherwise it won't suck in that area.
Right.
The plastic sits on that flat, and there's no it'll seal it, and there won't be any way for the vacuum to pull that down.
Now, how do you know where to put the holes? Is it trial and error, or is it just
there's some general rules of thumb. Like in this cavity, in the square cavity, there's 1 in each corner.
Right.
That's the last place where it'll be pulled, so it's pulling from the corners. If you think about a droopy piece of saran wrap or something.
Well, we're talking about molds.
Yep.
Have you done any molds for figures? Are you thinking about doing that? I mean, it's a huge thing. Games and figures and whatnot. Is that something you're interested in getting into?
The figures, I would say, although it interests me, I don't think it would lend itself well to the thermoforming
Right.
process. It's pretty much an all injection molding type deal where you have the mold, and then you pressurize super hot molten plastic and pressurize and shoot it in there, and then it cools into the piece, and then you separate the mold, and you got the piece. I can't really do things like that with my process, but that being said, like this, terrain is something I have been thinking about doing.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, lightweight
So
terrain.
lightweight terrain, and this stuff is spray paintable and paintable, and you can prime this and paint it, and it'll look just like the heavier stuff.
Yep. And then
Um,
you could stack it one on each other, right? Because they'll kind of
exactly.
fit.
Exactly. It'll just stack and save space as well.
That's interesting.
But yeah,
Um,
terrain is something that would work with the process
mm-hmm.
because it's more flat.
Right. What about you making the molds here in North America and then getting them somewhere else? Is that uh, something that could be done? Because I just remember when we were talking about making molds that the quality control is only so good when we're dealing with the factories in China,
Right.
the factories of my people, that we can't do all the quality control on the mold and that we'd like to, because shipping that mold back and forth is crazy.
Right.
But if we could, have more control at this end.
There's maybe there might be a way. I have never worked with China
Hmm.
on a project, although I have many friends who have, but not in the tooling. The molds are the most expensive thing about what I do. So
Yeah.
um, once I have the mold, I can print these out, but the price point is set by the mold cost.
Okay.
Basically.
And so for the companies out there or the designers out there who are thinking of kickstarting, who are thinking of getting a custom insert made for their game, can you tell us what you figure your trayz impact has been on the campaigns of the games that you've been involved with?
Sure. I have basically three methods of when, and it depends on when I enter the Kickstarter campaign. If I'm there from the beginning, like I was for Island Dice, I can get everything ready and design a tray that would work and promote it the whole time during the campaign, and that is where would have the most impact on the campaign, because I would bring all my advertising ability and marketing ability from my GameTrayz clients and lists. So you would have the advertising, plus you would have the additional add-on, which could help you get to your goal or add additional funding to your campaign. And if I come in at that level or at the beginning, I split profits with the game designer.
Hmm.
So it's basically free money at that point for the designer for the Kickstarter. What I do is I take the mold cost out, and then we split the profits right down the middle for that specific campaign.
Hmm.
So it's really no risk to them. The only risk would be to me is if we didn't sell any trays and I
Right.
still have to make a mold and the
Right.
campaign still funds. But I don't see that as a big risk because I don't need to sell too many trays for it to cover the mold cost, especially if I make the mold myself. So um, at that point is I think the most fun I have. I think with working with these designers is getting in on the ground level, helping them add cool things that are specific to their game instead of things that they just make up to add on to their campaigns to
Right.
try to get extra money. So it's specifically designed for their game.
That's cool. I think a lot of the things you said are just very, very, very interesting to me, and a lot of the words that you're using is like, oh, that's cool, and this is cool, and that's cool. And is that what drives you to do this? Is that you want to make the games that are cool even cooler? Is that what?
Yeah, definitely. Like I said, I always buy. I have hundreds of games, and I buy Plano boxes for them. And like, man, wouldn't it be cool if this Plano box had this little area over here where you could hold these specific pieces, and then you could pass it around the table, or this one would have a shuffling mechanism or a tilt mechanism. Or I think about that stuff like nonstop when I'm playing games, and it's just fun for me. So
Do you ever win any games?
yeah, I'm just always thinking about the trays. No,
Yeah.
I try. If you ask my friends, they say I never win, but I tend to win games the first few times I play them. So I'm good at picking it up quickly, but then
Hmm.
everyone else figures out better ways to play it because I'm moving on to the next game trying to figure that one out.
Yeah. Or you're designing a tray in your head at the
Right.
I see, I see. Well, it's been awesome talking to you. It's funny because my co-host said, "Well, what kind of stuff would that tray thing have to do with game design?" I said, "You don't understand. Let me do this. I want to do this." He said, "Okay, you can do that."
Yeah, so the island dice thing was huge for me as far as coming up with a way to make the tray actually part of the game, and then that could only lead to cooler things where the board is a tray or there's pieces of the game that is part of the tray. So that
Yeah.
would be
So
really cool.
what I want to do, what I'm going to do, I'm kind of making a challenge for myself. I'm going to write it down. Is I want to make a game where the board is, three-dimensional,
Sure.
but also can be used to store stuff.
Yes. Well, hey,
I
you saw
know.
the island dice has the tray fits in the dice rolling area in
Hmm.
the box, so it's multifunctional too. It
Yeah. So
stores and
make something that is really cool to look at, really immersive to play on,
Mhm,
and
mhm.
has a function stuff as a functionality as well, where you're getting that kind of, oh, this is such a cool thing where everything fits in a little box and all that kind of stuff.
Or the board is the box.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
There's
So,
no cardboard box. It's all tray.
yeah, you and I are gonna have a talk. We're gonna have a
Hmm.
good talk. So, yeah, I mean, when I was in Cub Scouts and things like that, that was always my thing, was taking those little Altoid tins and
Hmm.
making survival kits out of them.
Yeah, nice.
So,
So
definitely on the
one
efficiency
thing
tip.
that I'm kind of challenged to thinking about, and maybe you can lend me your ideas about it.
Sure.
Um, so I'm torn. I keep going back and forth on whether I want to design a generic tray. So do I want to offer something like this, which is a Euphoria tray, right?
Hmm.
Which is specifically for Euphoria. Do I want to make something similar to this with its own lid that you could use in multiple games? Um, can I make something that will do that better than a Plano box? And I think I can, but I just don't know um, if people want that or if they'll just want the Plano boxes if that's all they want is to store games. But this idea, you can still use it in the in game. You can still use Plano boxes in game, I guess, but you're still not getting the exact spots you need. But that's the general idea. What do you think? I didn't really say that very well, but
No, 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 I get it. I don't know. I think the specificity that your stuff brings to a game is the allure.
hmm.
That it's so specific to that kind of box that is really kind of cool.
Hmm.
Um, it's funny because there are companies out there that have generic inserts. I'm going to pull one out right now. So this is a generic insert for a three-deck box
Yep.
that, if anybody's designing a game that has three decks in it, they would probably get this for that specific box size.
Yep.
And that's cool, but you see companies will use this and just put two decks and then shove all the dice in that one, right?
Right. Right.
And when I see that, uh, as a consumer, I look at it and say, huh, they're just reusing old parts.
Well, they're
And
trying to save that mold cost,
yeah,
which
they're
is
saving that mold cost. So um, I think what you would want to do, or maybe what you would want to do in that specific little one that you had in front of you,
mhm.
can you show that again?
Yep. This is actually the Euphoria
Yeah.
tray with Brewcrafters pieces in it.
Yeah, and you know what? I think something like that is great for any game that doesn't have like a bank.
Yeah.
Or if you could make something that held paper money or cards or something like that. I saw somebody actually do something really interesting. Those business card holders, so
Mm-hmm.
that hold them vertically
Mm-hmm.
to save table space. That's what they use to hold different decks of cards. And that was really kind of interesting. It's a really neat use of that,
Yeah,
because
like for Eldritch Horror or Arkham
yeah,
Horror type
yeah, yeah,
games.
yeah. So actually, I think it might have been for one of those, or like Imperial Assault, or
Mm-hmm.
something like that, where the cards don't always have to be flat on the table, and they're just kind of there to draw from. For games that take up a huge amount of table space, if you
Mm-hmm.
can make anything that organizes that into a useful form that still is ergonomic but looks good
Yeah.
and keeps things upright and safe or whatnot and not
Yeah.
tipping,
Yeah.
that's good. I think that kind of stuff is neat. And the generic tray that you have right there would be a good one for like my game Belfort, which doesn't come with an insert because there's no box big enough to hold
And
that game.
that's the problem with Belfort. I want to
I
design
know.
something for Belfort, but there's no space in the box.
Yeah, don't
Because
worry about it.
when I design it, right, you have to have certain drafts and stuff on the tray so it pops off the mold. So
Right.
that all takes up space, which there's no space in Belfort. But
I know, especially once you shove that expansion in there.
right.
Um, but you know what? What might be interesting is looking at standard box sizes, right?
Hmm.
So Days of Wonder has a very standard box size. It's very funny when we meet with Days of Wonder, they say to us, "So, have you designed a game that'll fit in our box?" That's exactly what they say, because they just use that box. That box is their box. They know the dimensions. They know how to sell that particular type of box.
Right.
And so they don't want anything that doesn't fit in that box. They don't want anything Twilight Imperium size, and they don't want
Hmm.
any little card game.
Sure.
They've tried with both of those ends of things, and they haven't done well at them because they don't know how to deal with all the marketing and shipping and stuff that goes with different sizes of box. They know
Hmm.
that box really well.
Yeah.
So there are some very standard like bookshelf size boxes, the square boxes that, those types of games come in. That might be worth looking into.
Well,
I don't know.
even something like this could fit in Belfort
For sure.
and hold your resources. It could
Yeah,
hold your
yeah,
wood,
definitely.
you know.
And I think that's where the generic trays might come in, is to those games that don't come with inserts or come with really, shoddy ones, but are so expensive and would be so expensive for you to even make a mold. So I'm thinking like Imperial Assault, where to make something that held all that stuff
Hmm.
at a vacuum forming level would be kind of ridiculous.
Yeah.
But when it's done, it's like a godsend. So I don't know. I've seen some of the other stuff from so Broken Token and whatnot,
Hmm.
and that people are custom making for themselves out of foam core
Right.
that do a good job. They do a good job of organizing the box of something as complex um, as Imperial Assault or Descent,
Uh-huh.
kind of the same game,
Yeah.
uh, in terms of parts and whatnot. And then that kind of stuff is functional, but it's not as pretty. It's
Yeah.
not, and in effect, it's actually more costly. Not when you custom do it yourself with foam core, but if you get somebody else to do the foam core for you, or if another company might be flat packing wood pieces to you to slot together
Yeah.
for that, then the costs become fairly astronomical for what you're getting. And that was actually kind of my whole first thought about this whole aftermarket business of parts. And then I saw your stuff and said, oh, that's actually a reasonable cost.
Hmm.
Functionality is great. The aesthetics is off the charts. And if it's resilient, then yeah, I'm in. And so that's actually why I asked you for samples. Is like,
Yeah.
how rigid is this stuff? And I work with different plastics a lot, and so
Hmm.
30 mil, 40 mil is a really decent um, a decent thickness for what we're getting.
And if it was something so if I knew it was specifically for a board game store or shop that was using it heavily, might even recommend or offer a different plastic that is even thicker or more resilient, because
Yeah.
there are plastics that are more expensive that are the same thickness but better at being
Hmm.
resilient. And I could definitely even do that to make it even more resilient.
Interesting.
there's a lot of brand name plastics out there that are like Kydex is one, and that even at 30 mil is twice as strong as this stuff I'm using now, but
Right.
it's
But it's
like
also twice the cost.
$5 a sheet or $6 a sheet or something crazy. So
Yeah. That's really cool though. Is there any advice? This is usually the last question we ask. So, is there any advice that you could give to game designers out there, maybe people who are thinking of kickstarting? How do they get in touch with you?
mhm.
What advice would you give them if they're thinking about using your services? And what advice would you give them in terms of designing their game, to make best use of something like what you can offer them?
Okay. So get a hold of me is pretty easy. You can email me. I guess you could put up the email
Sure.
on the screen, but it's just my name, Noah, at GameTrayz.com. Or you can contact me on GameTrayz's Facebook page, which is just /GameTrayz, that's with a Z, or GameTrayz.com, there's a contact form, or there's Twitter, GameTrayz, so that's pretty easy. Um, as far as people who are doing Kickstarters that are thinking about maybe a tray, get a hold of me early. Try to get in touch with me as soon as possible in your process, because then I have a lot of time to design a tray and get things going and brainstorm with you as far as cool ideas. Like the dice rolling thing for Island Dice just happened when I was talking with the designer, and look, unfortunately, I only had like a week to prepare for that game, but it's a lot of back and forth would help in the Kickstarters. And what was the other question?
The other question is, if they're doing designs specifically thinking of
Mm,
you in mind, what kind of things do they need to consider? What
okay,
type of
yeah.
other things can you do?
Things to consider if you're thinking about definitely doing a game tray, and you're just thinking about your components is it's nice to know the dimensions of your components and whether they'll change or not during the process. So if you have a brick like this and you want it to sit exactly in a spot, I can design a spot for it. But if there's a stretch goal that increases the size of this brick by 2 millimeters, that's not going to fit anymore. So you have to think about every piece and how we're going to put it in the box or the tray uh, beforehand to make sure that it fits perfectly, and that's the goal. So every component matters, and getting idea of what the final components are going to be up front would be a big help. Is a big help. Not that you can't change things, but once we go to tooling, then pretty much you can't change after that. So think about your pieces for sure.
I have one question about pieces before
Mhm.
we end this,
Yeah.
because I was just thinking, um, can you make fairly robust pieces that aren't necessarily figures,
Hmm.
but that might be, say, like a cart or a vehicle that holds cubes in it,
Yep. Or a
for that
boat.
kind of thing, or a boat.
Mm-hmm.
That
Yes.
would that would be pretty cool.
Hmm.
Have you done that
Yep.
yet?
Um, Not specifically, but the issue with that is the cut line. So, but it's not something you can't work around or do. But if you think about this little tray here, right? This has straight edges, so I can cut it straight and then round the corners with a corner rounder.
Okay.
And I'll do that if I have a small amount to make. If I have thousands to make, I can make a cut die, which is basically razor blades bent in the right exact shape and press it down on it, and it cuts it all at once.
Right.
So if we did that, where a piece was, or a boat or a car that held pieces, or tokens, and we were doing thousands of them, we could make a die that would stamp all those out and cut them perfectly every time.
Hmm.
And then you can do cool corners and round things and different shapes with the cut line. So yeah, it's something you could definitely do, and it would be perfect for this process. We could do them in different colors, or one thing I was thinking about with clear is you can design a clear thing and then put a paper underneath with printed paper underneath, and then seal it in with another piece of plastic. So now you have like a design that you can see through the top.
Oh, that's sick.
Um,
I'm getting big design ideas coming out
yeah.
of my brain right now.
So like your little car could be a car shape, but then at the bottom is like decals and headlights and
Hmm.
onto the bottom, and then you can heat seal around the edge and make like a sandwich basically. Similar to I don't know if you own Ogre,
Yeah, yeah,
that
yeah.
monstrosity of
Yeah,
a game.
I own the micro game version from 1982.
Gotcha. Well, if you ever get a chance to look at the big box version,
Oh, I've seen it.
they've got some, but look at the trays because
Oh, okay.
that's what I look at. The trays, the trays are interesting, and they have that same idea where there's a paper sandwiched in between a clear tray and a clear bottom, and
Okay, I've
on
never
that
seen them. I'll look.
that's printed is like what goes in that spot basically. The same thing I do with the engraving, but
Mhm.
printed detail kind of thing.
Right. And that could be really, really pretty cool. I can see, like, I'm just thinking right now, and
Sure.
who knows, this might become my next design thing.
Yeah.
Like, if you take that clear tray, and underneath the clear tray we have like your player mat basically under
Yep.
there, right?
Hmm.
And then you're putting stuff in there, and you're taking stuff out of there when you're playing the game, and then it's like as soon as it's empty, some condition happens based on what you're reading on the bottom of it, like that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
Like,
just like
that's
in
really
Eclipse.
yeah, but that's a really interesting way of storing the game, using the components, and using your trays in order to make like a better game. Because
Hmm.
that's the biggest thing about things like Eclipse, is that a lot of times you need that aftermarket part to make sure that if I jostle the table, the game isn't ruined because all my
Right.
pieces have shifted over by one, right?
And
And
that's
so,
something definitely I've thought about a lot is a overlay for existing playmats.
mhm,
So even like the Belfort mat, if there was something that would fit right over top of it, that would have little cutouts for each of your resource type, and
mhm.
you know,
Yeah, and I mean, if things are flat, they'd fit in the Belfort box. But yeah, like how a lot of people will cut that stuff out of Lexan.
yeah.
Can you do excuse me, something that's like that, or would you form it differently? How
Well,
would you do something like that?
I wouldn't have to cut it. See, they cut it, and then the pieces sometimes those they can even jostle around, and then the Lexan comes up a little bit over the specifically on Eclipse.
Yeah, yeah,
I'm
yeah.
thinking, you got all the little cubes in there, and then you lift up one edge, and now all of them are all over the place again.
Right.
But with the tray, I could actually form it where it just sits down
Into a depression.
into a depression, so it's actually you can pick the whole thing up, and it'll stay in there.
Hmm.
So each cube has a little depression right next to each other, and that stuff would be perfect for forming thermoforming process because that kind of cavity is well suited, I guess you could say, for that kind of thing. And then you can slap your board on the back and even design it so the board snaps in a little bit around the edge, and now you have a complete 3D player map that has little dishes for all your energy or things like that.
That is super cool. I want to show you something just before we go. What I have here is this, if you can see from the side,
Uh-huh.
a square of paper, of cardboard, of mat board,
Yeah.
and then it's all individually. I cut this, literally they're 2 millimeters thick,
Yes.
and cut all these lines here to make this grid.
Yeah.
And then I found this at a dollar store, which is like
Uh-huh.
a cup
Uh-huh.
or something.
Yeah.
Into this cup, I'm going to put a bunch of cubes of different colors, almost like a boggle thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Remember the word game boggle, right?
Yeah.
And then, see, I'm
Yeah.
going to turn this over, and it actually fits kind of right in there. And
Yeah.
shake it up, and then drop it in here, and then they all line up into this little thing here. So they all slide down into their slots.
Ah, okay. Yeah. Yeah. That's
Um,
cool.
It is, but I can't make more than one.
So see,
It's really
the cool
tedious.
thing about thermoforming is I could take that exact cardboard thing that you have there, put it on my machine, and suck plastic over it, and then have another one right away.
That's crazy, eh?
That's basically the same thing as doing this crater,
Right. Of course, I'd probably want something a little more precision crafted
Right.
than
And
my cardboard
we can
prototype.
have cool little angles in there, and the bricks fall down in there, and create like a little slot type thing. That'd be cool.
Yeah, 'cause this is actually for a game that Jay and I were designing where the order of the cubes and the color of the cubes mattered in sort of a this is like a impending battle that's happening, and they come
Yeah,
down the pipe.
kind
It
of
was
like
a way to
Plinko,
randomize things. Pardon me?
like a Plinko board.
Sort of, yeah. It was like a Plinko board in a tower defense game. So, and this was one of the problems that we were having is that we couldn't figure this out well enough. Then we just kind of stopped designing it. But now that I'm talking to you, I have all these brain waves about, oh, how could this work? And that would be really cool. So it's interesting when components actually dictate design, or at least push you in some directions, which is
Hmm.
really, really interesting. So I thought this was a great talk. How about you?
It was fun. I like talking about trees.
Good. I can tell.
Or game point, the game or game pieces. So
Yeah.
yeah, I didn't know how long you wanted to talk, but when you said 2 hours, I didn't think we'd be able to talk that much. But
Oh
it's
no,
gone by fast.
I think you've got a lot of excellent product, and I really like where your head is in terms of what your goals are, your operational goals, your mandate, in
Hmm.
terms of what is this going to do for the game. I think that's key to look at the product and say, what is this going to do? How does this improve upon a situation? And I think that comes a lot from your engineering background and your whole, it's got to be efficient, but
Hmm.
it's got to look good, and
Hmm.
it's got to add functionality.
Right.
And once you put all those three things together, you've got a product that people will want if the price is low enough, and you've managed to figure out the process by which the shipping costs are going to be low, the price point's going to be low, it's all in the mold,
Hmm.
and there you go. You've got a product that I think is a real winner for not only you, but for designers as well. And as given the program that we're doing here, that's the key point, is how do designers utilize what's out there to make their games better
Hmm.
and to perhaps sell people on their ideas during a Kickstarter campaign, if that's what they're doing, or if they're a traditional manufacturer and they don't have access to somebody who can design, really good inserts, and they're using, the kind of standard, this is what we do,
Hmm.
inserts. Can they get in touch with you, and could you do work for a bigger company? Have you done any work for a bigger company? Would you consider it?
Yes and yes. I'm currently talking to a couple companies to design some trays for some big games,
Excellent.
but it would be um, there would be a third party thing at this point, so it would be co-branded, but it would be still be an aftermarket thing,
Hmm.
so it wouldn't be in the game originally. But it's coming pretty quickly.
Cool.
So there is, I have tried, and there is issues, as you can imagine, with the big companies getting them into every game to begin with, right?
Right.
Like with Belfort, when you're going through that process, if you had a tray in every game, you're adding what,
$10
$10 to the
to
final
the
cost of the
yeah to
game.
the end user. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was like, you can't do that. Most people don't want to pay that extra ten
No.
bucks, but there's a lot of people who would pay that $10 if there was something available afterwards. So
Yeah, but then for games like through Fantasy Flight, where they're already paying 120 for the game, is $10 that much of a deal, a big deal to some of them,
hmm
right? So and volume's an issue too, right? So at that level of volume, when Fantasy Flight is pumping out, 10,000 copies versus a smaller publisher that's putting out 3,000 copies,
right.
you're looking at a price point where it could be more amenable to the end user. So
And I think what I've found and thought about is it seems to be that my product is perfectly geared for the premium edition of a game.
yeah.
So, and a lot of Kickstarters are doing that now, where you can buy the standard version, or you can get the deluxe version during the Kickstarter, and it comes
Hmm.
with the tray. It's a
Hmm.
little bit more because it costs more because it has better pieces, um, and that fits perfectly into
Oh
you know,
yeah, 100%.
the idea. And then I was thinking, so how do I go back from there? Then I could come up with different trays that would be for the base version that don't have all the cool bells and whistles of the deluxe version, but still add some functionality or storage to the game.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, there's so many different ways to do this. It's just
Yeah,
it's
it's
cool.
really
It's
it's
cool that
interesting.
I can do all these different ways of working with game companies and designers, and it's just a fun place to be.
Excellent. Well, on that note, we're going to say goodbye to Noah from GameTrayz. He's been an awesome, awesome guest, and we loved having him here. And I think that hopefully we'll be able to see more of your products in the near future and get to use them in games and game cafes across the country and hopefully around the world.
Yes,
I want
definitely
to
around the world. I have shipped GameTrayz to about 25 different countries so far.
wow,
That's out there.
that's really good. And I definitely think the shipping weight is a big plus in the plastic end of things opposed to the wood end of things. So excellent. So thanks so much, and we'll talk to you soon. Okay.
Great. Thanks for having me.
All right. See you later.
Later.